Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca. He invented the Inc. Canadian Insider Index, which is used by the Horizons Canadian Insider Index ETF, 2017 and 2018 Fund Data Fund Grade A Plus Award winner. His website, CanadianInsider.com. Welcome back to the show, Ted.
Thanks for having me back, Jim.
Ted, 2 weeks ago we talked about how the telecoms might fare if the Liberals win the next election. Well, how are the telecoms doing?
Well, the issue was more whether there would be a minority government or a majority government, because the warning sign was that if there was a minority government, that the big telecoms would be in the crosshairs of politicians, because politicians would want to show the public that they could reduce their cell phone bills. And lo and behold, 2 days after the election, Rogers Communications came out with a profit warning. Its shares tanked, and so did BCE, which we warned about on this very show, that insiders were selling massive amounts of stock over in the last 90 days. They sold over $100 million worth of stock in the public market. That's a lot of stock even for BCE, as it was hitting new 52-week highs. That was a big warning sign. We actually even put out a video on that, which you can get through our YouTube channel. Should investors hang up on BCE shares ahead of October 21st? And as it turned out, that would have been probably the good thing to do, because it's back to where they were trading 90 days ago. Insiders have taken their money off the table, and anybody who was buying at the high because it offered a 4% plus dividend yield, well, all that dividend yield's been eaten up in capital losses. So just because a stock has a high dividend yield doesn't make it immune from capital losses. So there was an example in real time almost about how necessarily a high dividend yield isn't going to help preserve your capital. So that was an outcome that was not too surprising, and I know there's going to be a lot of chatter saying, it's now bargain and the gap is going to close. We still have a mixed outlook on that stock, and my sense is it's going to be rough going for these big telecom stocks for the next 4 years, during however long this minority government lasts, as these companies will always be vulnerable to government intervention. So that the politicians, Jim, can go out to the voters and say they're doing something for us, right? That they're keeping our cell phone bills low. I mean, they want to be able to say that, and unfortunately, that doesn't work in the best interest of big telecom shareholders. So we wouldn't be rushing into that industry right now as investors.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the 2019 drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, was the oil patch one of the winners in the election?
Believe it or not, they won a little bit. Now, that is my opinion, of course, and let me explain it. Once we had that minority government, there were a lot of fears. Oh no, what's going to happen to Trans Mountain Pipeline? And those fears were well founded. It was a real risk that in a minority parliament situation, you would have the NDP demanding that the Liberals stop the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Well, kind of out of the blue, first of all, no pun intended, the Bloc Québécois actually holds the balance of power now in Parliament, not the NDP. They're the Separatist Party in Quebec, of course. And Yves-François Blanchet gave an interview with the Globe and Mail and said, well, no, we don't really care about the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We just don't want pipelines through Quebec. And so he indicated that he wasn't going to stop the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and it wasn't going to be a price for anything that he wanted out of Parliament. He just doesn't want to get involved with Western politics, and his view is, they can do out west what they want to do, just don't put a pipeline through Quebec. Now, it's bad news that they're going to, put up a fuss about any pipeline going through Quebec. But look, that was a long shot to begin with. Even if we had a conservative majority, getting Energy East pipeline built in the next decade, was, I would put it maybe a 2.5% chance of it happening, maybe 5% if you're lucky. So the fact that you've now got a situation where Trans Mountain can be built, and we wrote about this today, Thursday, in our morning report about a small cap value stock that probably stands to benefit because no one believes that any of these energy projects are going to happen. Well, some of them are. So, so I say that the oil patch is a winner a little bit. No, it's not, no time to popping out the champagne corks, but it could have been a lot worse. And believe it or not, Jim, there are going to be some energy projects that looks like they're going to get done in Western Canada. So we're making some progress. So it's not quite as gloomy as you see in the media, and some politicians are trying to stir up, a lot of angst. And, no, the problems have not been solved in the oil patch, but they go beyond, just pipelines. It would help if the world price of oil picked up as well, and there's, pipelines going to the U.S. that can't get built. So the fact that we're going to have Trans Mountain likely built is a small win, a very small win, but it's win, and I'm sure anything on the plus side of the ledger, people in the oil patch will gladly take. So from that sense, it's a good development what's happened since the election night.
What is the Triple C Canadian economy?
Well, this has been a phrase coined by David Rosenberg from Gluskin Chef. He appeared on a video that I saw the other day on our website, and it stands for, are you ready? This is Mr. Rosenberg's 3 C's, not mine. Cannabis, condos, and crude. Okay, so and this is how he characterizes the Canadian economy. Now, I don't know if I go quite as far as to say that's all our economy's got going for us, but he makes a good point, right? That the Canadian economy's been lulling along here on some pretty nebulous sort of engines. We can't keep building condos forever, and I guess you could basically substitute condos for credit, and the cannabis craze, it won't be able to go so far in terms of driving markets and the economy. And of course, crude, we all aware of the pitfalls of relying on that boom and bust part of the economy. So his view is we're not mature, we're not breaking out into new productivity. I'm not quite sure I agree with that, but we could be doing a lot better. That I would certainly agree with. And I think this is an opportunity for the Conservatives. They really need to get their heads around why they can't break through this sort of get to 40% in the popular vote. And, they're going to really, and this isn't just a Canadian conservative phenomenon. It's also, I think it's a North American conservative phenomenon. They've really got to get their heads around how they're going to disrupt I would say kind of there's a lull that voters are in this, Triple C economy here in Canada. Voters on both sides of the border have been kind of lulled into accepting this mediocre economic performance by cheap money. In Canada, we've done a lot of debt financing. People have gone higher into debt, and in the U.S., the government's gone more into debt. So debt's been lulling lulling voters into, I don't want to call it a false sense of security. I don't think there's that feeling, but just sort of an acceptance of the way things are, where the Conservatives, I think they really need to sort of get their heads around how they're going to disrupt things and say, no, we can do better. And, with all due respect to my conservative friends listening, a child tax credit, for music lessons doesn't quite do it. They're going to have to really kind of regroup and rethink and come up with something bold. If it's affordability, they talk about changing how central bank inflation targets should be 0. Those types of things. They have to come up with something big and to change the narrative. Now in the U.S., they've got Trump, but if something were to happen to Trump, who has disrupted the system, what if he gets impeached or he just doesn't run again? The Conservatives in the United States have the same issue as the Conservatives here in Canada. I mean, to some extent, Trump saved the Republican Party from irrelevancy. And now you've got a situation where Elizabeth Warren is charging ahead with her own agenda. It's going to stand in stark contrast to Trump and, the conservative agenda. I think, Trump can probably beat Elizabeth Warren, but what if something were to happen to Trump, right? Could another conservative step in and beat her? I don't know. And again, in Canada, you've got Justin Trudeau, who, basically has dodged a bullet here so far on SNC-Lavalin. If he manages to stay in power and he dodges that bullet, what are the Conservatives going to offer to disrupt people's sort of lull, the lull that they're in here? And they're going to have to come up with something. So there's an opportunity, I think, for the Conservatives, and they're going to have to get their heads around sort of how do they disrupt things with substantive policy that goes beyond sort of these little boutique tax cuts, getting $50 a month so you can go on the public transit. I mean, they're going to have to do better than that. There's just no question about it if they want to win.
Should Scheer resign?
I think he should, and it comes down to disclosure. I mean, in our business at Inc. Research, we push very hard for best practices in the public markets and from public company officials who run stocks that people on listening to this program invest in. And in fact, we've put out a no-go list on companies that we don't believe are following what we would say culturally the best practices. Okay, now they're not doing anything illegal. They're not doing anything that's not against. They're doing everything by the book. They've gone and they've played it by the book, but we just don't think it's an appropriate way to do best practices. Okay, so now if we hold public companies and insiders to high standards, why should we not be doing the same for politicians? Why should there be a different standard for politicians? And Andrew Scheer failed to disclose his American citizenship. Okay, so people may say, well, it's no big deal. People are dual citizens. No, it is a big deal if you're running for prime minister. It's a big deal because if you're a citizen of another country, it has implications. Okay, think foreign policy. Think, when you have to make decisions in terms of major policy decisions. If you're a citizen of another country, it could matter, and it depends on which country. But Canadians have to be able to judge that, and by withholding that information, and I think he should have disclosed it when he ran for party leader. Never mind when he was running for prime minister. Let people decide then. Okay, it doesn't matter, or it does matter if someone is an American citizen. If they're a citizen of of the Bahamas, maybe it's a different story. Well, why are you a citizen of the Bahamas? You know what I mean? So Canadians needed to be able to thoroughly assess that, and the fact that it kind of came out the way it did, kind of through the back door, indicates that Mr. Scheer does not have a clue about disclosure and best practices, and it also makes it hard, almost impossible for him to hold the Trudeau government up to a high standard on disclosure. So no, I think he has to go, and I think it's also would be a good time for the Conservatives to do a major policy rethink, and so that they can disrupt the CCC economy with some fresh new policies that go beyond $50 for saxophone lessons.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after this.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, one of the notes that you sent me before the interview is saying the global economy is showing the same kind of growth it showed in the 1930s when we were in the world's deepest depression. What's happening?
Yeah, this is a remarkable chart that I actually came across from a very astute writer and analyst on Twitter from Alhambra Investments. The chart basically was from a fellow named Jeffrey Schneider. Basically, it shows that from peak to trough and then to peak. So look, in 1929 when the economy peaked, then it went through a major valley, and then it had a sharp rebound a couple of times. Okay, so it was a very kind of violent dip and a very violent recovery. Put that against the last 10 years, the drop wasn't as steep, but the recovery was so slow, so mild, that you ended up in the same place. So basically, the ride has not been as violent as we saw in the 1930s, and shocking and disruptive, but you ended up in the same place. You know, it's been the same amount of growth, global growth, in the last 10 years as people experienced in the 30s. It's just you didn't have the ups and downs that they did in the 30s. So that's really remarkable. I think it says a lot about the unease of people. They sense that something is wrong, and there is something wrong. I mean, when you see the Fed having to come in and do hundreds of billions of dollars sometimes a day in propping up the financial system, and the stock market's still kind of carrying on in its own merry way here. But, there are weird things going on, Jim. And you ask people, why is the Fed having to buy all these treasury bills and throw money in the system? No one really knows, and there's probably only a few players in the financial system that really have a handle on why the Fed is having to do these kind of almost like emergency measures to keep the banking system going. So, yeah, it is uneasy times, and in the meantime, what do you do as an investor? And we've written about this. We think that there's we're kind of staring down a fork in the road, and I don't know if we're right in front of the fork or if the fork's still a month or a year or two away, but we either have to reflate and basically inflate away the debts, and that's got all sorts of repercussions, or there's going to have to be a reset, and that means like a market correction, and that has repercussions as well. So to suggest that I know which way that's going to go would be beyond my pay scale. So we'll just have to see. But I think people do have to be prepared for a change in the investing landscape compared to what we've been used to under the old boy playbook, the Bernanke, Obama, Yellen playbook. We are in new times. We're starting to see value stocks outperform growth stocks in the United States. Just over the last few months, so far year to date, growth stocks are still ahead, but the trend seems to be changing. But we've had false starts before. Eventually, though, I think you are going to see things like small cap value start to outperform again. But the question is when. Going through this transition, there's going to be a lot of churning back and forth. So, just a couple of lessons I think in the last few weeks and days we've learned is the dividend yield is not going to save you when risk hits, and that you just have to be prepared for the unknown because there's a lot going on beneath the surface that very few people seem to really have a handle on.
Ted, how would you sum up the situation that we're facing right now economically?
We're moving a little bit backwards in terms of free markets, so that's not a positive sign in the sense that you've got, the United States in a trade war with China that's not going to be easily solved. So that by itself is going to limit growth. But on the other side, you've got technological innovation that, as investors, I think you're getting down to stock picking, and you've got to look for those areas where are going to surprise on the upside. And I think one of the surprises is going to be infrastructure in Western Canada, in the oil patch, in northern British Columbia. People have written it off. Expectations are so low. So you want to go in and invest where expectations are low, not where expectations are already super high and baked into the cake.
Ted, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, thanks for having me back.
My guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca, his website, CanadianInsider.com. If you have any questions for Ted or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@HowStreet.com. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.